Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Bellingham City Council February 22nd session. Our announcements this evening: Bellingham City Council meets all requirements of the State of Washington Open and Meetings Act. Also, we were due to have a public hearing, which has been rescheduled. So the public hearing scheduled for this evening regarding the redevelopment proposal for the owned property at 315 West Holly Street, known as the Army Street property, has been postponed, and staff will determine when it will be beneficial to allow the project team. They have allowed the project team additional time to refine the feasibility of the project concept prior to soliciting community input and council direction. Staff will provide a brief staff did provide a brief status update this afternoon. You can see that on our committee televised. And the public will be notified when the hearing is to be rescheduled. So again, that has been postponed. If everyone could join us with a Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
April Barker.
Here.
Dan Hamill.
Here.
Jean Knudsen.
Here.
Michael Lillequist.
Here.
Roxanne Murphy.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Terry Borneman.
Here.
Now we'll move to our 15-minute public comment period. Michael, could you grab the sign-up sheet and see if there's anybody up there? Thank you so much. And just as a reminder to keep your comments under 3 minutes, and we provide a safe place for all participants, so no hooting and hollering and cheering. We're going to start with a review of our afternoon committee meetings, and the first... Oh.
Yeah, we got it.
Oh, jeez. I'm a little discombobulated. Please forgive me this evening. We'll start with Gary.
Good evening. Gary Vodovich, Sammy's Neighborhood Association. Just a couple of items that I want to bring out and just kind of throw out in front of you and just see what kind of reaction you're going to have. And I know you can't give me any at this point, but I'd just like you to think about this. The R-zone 1ing that we have in the Bellingham area doesn't exist. I mean, there's no such thing anymore as R1 single family. I think just like a Samish neighborhood, we're just inundated with housing that has got, 5, 6, 7, 8 people in it. We're quite close to the Western, so we have kind of become the secondary or third, whatever one, of housing for the students. And it's not really fun to be in a neighborhood. I bought into the area because of the quietness. Not many people up there, and now I'm just inundated with traffic. It's just unbelievable. Noise, parties, all this. However, we also got our good kids that are in there. I mean, there's some of the kids that are in there, and there's one group of ladies that live in there that go to Western. Never have a problem with it. If they have going to have a party, they alert the neighbors. Good people. So we do have the good and the bad, but R1 doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't. Another one, no more than 3, unrelated. This is one that was started out by council, sent to the mayor. This goes back probably further back than many of you here, right, Terry? And talked about by council, took to the mayor. She just thought about it, brought it back to the mayor, or back to the council. It was passed, but they didn't put anybody in charge. No more than 3. It's supposed to be no more than 3 family members, nothing past that. But so you got this code floating around that means nothing. The Yellow Motel, that was shut down because of drug activity, prostitution, cooking drugs, and all of that good stuff. You bought it, wiped it out, going to sell it, all this. And what do? You go say, okay, now you guys can have pot stores right around in the immediate area. It doesn't quite come together here, folks. I mean, you're shutting one down because of a drug problem, and then you come in and put in the pot sellers right there next to where it's at. And if you look back on, because of the activity now that marijuana is now legal, no longer does the law enforcement little notes in there about all of the impaired drivers and all it used to say impaired, alcohol, so forth and so on. Now the only thing you see is impaired driving. which covers marijuana usage and all that. So it's kind of, you know, we're just keep opening pot shops, all that, and we keep saying more and more and more. Watch the police report. The activity of impaired driving is counting up higher and higher and higher. Here is just a suggestion. For those folks that are nailed by or stopped by the Bellingham Police Department for no license, suspended driver, whatever it may be, can I go for just a couple of more seconds here? That's a suggestion that when they are caught the second time around, that the car be confiscated and auctioned off. Now, I say that because those people that are driving around with no license, suspended license, no insurance, are just costing everybody in this area money, because our insurance goes up to pay for any accidents they're in. They clobbered one of you people, your insurance pays, they don't, because they don't have the money. Let's get some money back out of this thing. Confiscate their cars. The only one that I would say you don't confiscate if it was a stolen vehicle. But otherwise, confiscate their cars. Sell them. Get some money back. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else that would care to please come to the podium, and if you could please state your name for us?
For the record, it's Everett Barton, Puget neighborhood, and I've just got a handout here. I've got all 7 copies. This is about possible rent control or an alternative. I want to commend Mayor Linville for her letter to the in the Cascadia that expressed her heart for the housing crisis here in Bellingham. And I live in a handicapped unit at the Hideaway, and that's a property held by the Royce Group. And it just seems, and we had a $35 rent rise starting March 1st. And I received $787 from the government, and so I have to pay $745 for my rent. So I'm suggesting, and I'm volunteering, that if we need somebody to do a spreadsheet of all the handicapped units, let's start there, and see if we can subsidize handicapped units where needed. The principle being, and you can see it in italics at the bottom, that if we as a city grant a building permit for building apartment complexes, then we should have some say about an affordable cap. And we might have signed away our rights in the boilerplate of all these contracts in the building department. I don't know. When they come to ask for a building permit, we might have signed away our rights to do anything about it. So that needs to be investigated. A spreadsheet could be made of the handicap units all around town and in the county, and then some of the money that, you know, I'm saying this because Kelly was asking for ideas in her letter, or a perspective, and this is a perspective from a retired person who is going to be facing some hardship with this, and it's likely that rent controls come around before. I just don't know, because, you know, I've been in Bellingham since 1994, but I don't pay attention to every little detail about when the topic comes up. So it's something that to maybe get things going. The other fellow was about housing as well, different kind of subject, but we do need to face this, and I'm suggesting that if someone wants to, my email's on the page, if someone wants to email me and say, hey, come to my office, let's kick this ball around a little bit more and see what we can come up with. We can certainly do a spreadsheet of handicapped units. Whether or not we can get everybody on board to get a subsidy going, that could be up to the Opportunity Council or another function of the City Council. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Everett. Is there anyone else that would care to speak at public comment?
If anybody wants to give you one back, I would like to.
We can share. All right, if not, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the meeting and move on to our committee meetings from this afternoon. Our first meeting was planning and is chaired by Jean Knudsen.
Thank you, Pinky. On the Plan Committee today, we had one item. It was a review of the population employment growth forecast recently approved by the Whatcom County Council. On February 9th, the Whatcom County Council approved a 20-year population and employment growth forecast for the City of Bellingham. The population approved growth forecast is slightly higher than the forecast recommended by the City Council. 2,650 people over 20 years. Staff reviewed this with us this afternoon, and the committee unanimously moved approval, and I so move.
Second.
We have a motion in front of us to accept the population growth numbers. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Barker.
Well, I mean, clearly we were unanimous, and I will remind people that we had discussions earlier today, so if you want to go back and check those out. But it's something that I approve with the caveat of understanding that the planning director has promised to have these discussions about the UGAs as soon as we get through the comp planning process, and I really appreciate that. I'll look forward to having those discussions.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Thanks. I think we picked the right number to begin with, so I'm going to be voting no, with a full understanding that when this works out, I may end up voting yes and bow to reality. But at this moment, I'm going to vote no and hope there's a window of opportunity, which may not be there.
Any other discussion? No? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 6-1.
End of committee.
Thank you, Dean. Our next committee is Lake Whatcom Reservoir and Natural Resources, chaired by Councilmember Dan Hamill.
Thank you, Pinky. We had one item before us today, and that was the report from the February 2nd, 2016 Lake Whatcom Policy Group meeting. In that report, there were 5 items. I'll briefly cover them. First one was city water treatment plant upgrade, impacts and mitigation. City staff provided information on the planned upgrade of the city's water treatment facility in Whatcom Falls Park. The upgrade will assist the city in managing water flows into the plant and help stabilize treatment processes. Peak demand has decreased from 18 to 20 million gallons a day down to 13 or 14 million per day. As less water flows through the system, disinfectant byproducts can build up as water moves through the pipes towards end users. Although such byproducts remain well below federal standards, they have been on an upward trajectory in recent years. Total cost for installing the new water system will be around $16 million. Outreach and permitting is happening currently, with construction July 16 through July 16 through February 2018, with the completion of March 2018. The second item was a brief update on state AIS program development. City staff provided an update on recent developments that may affect the state's aquatic invasive species prevention program. In 2015, the legislature asked the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Washington Invasive Species Council to set up an aquatic invasive species funding advisory committee to provide recommendations to the legislature on a funding mechanism for increased resources for invasive species management and prevention. The target is to find a way to raise $5 million annually for prevention and education. About half of the funding will likely come from the general fund to reflect that all residents benefit from healthy water. Third item was annual 2015 Lake Whatcom work plan report, and staff provided an overview of the upcoming 2015 Lake Whatcom Management Program Progress Report. Several program areas, including land preservation, stormwater, land use, aquatic invasive species, and education and engagement. Fourth item was Sudden Valley Stormwater Management Plan. Sudden Valley's worked with Wilson Engineering over the past year to update its stormwater management plan. All lots and common properties in Sudden Valley drain directly to Lake Whatcom. The new stormwater plan will provide plans that will be available to homeowners to use in helping design any required treatment systems or methods. And the fifth and final item today was just the meeting schedule for 2016. Public's more than welcome to attend these meetings, and that's going to be on the city calendar page at cob.org. End of committee.
Thank you, Dan. Next committee is Finance and Personnel, and our chair is Roxanne Murphy.
Good evening, everyone. So we had one agenda item, and it was an update on criminal background checks. So for those who have not heard of this, there is an initiative that is being considered by many municipalities and jurisdictions, and it's called Ban the Box. And what that initiative is asking is that employers would remove the section of job applications that asks if you have a criminal background or have a criminal record. And so this was taken up into consideration today in our committee. Our city administration let us know that they would be fine if we removed that box from our job applications. Then what would happen is if a job offer comes through to an individual, a background check would be done at that time. They also expressed that they would not like this to happen for certain public safety jobs like law enforcement. So what's going to happen now is that from Councilmember Hamel, a resolution discussing a ban the box for the City of Bellingham jobs will be brought forward on March 21st. And this was a motion that was made and supported unanimously, and I so move.
Council members, any discussion? No? Motion in front of us. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
End of committee.
Thank you, Roxanne. Next, move to Committee of the Whole. We had 4 items in front of us today. Our first one was a presentation by the FCS Group on general fund forecast and sustainability strategies associated with addressing the adopted level of service. Well, we had a report out this afternoon, and it was a little tough to hear in regards to meeting our budget and not eating up our reserves and the choices that we're going to have to make in the future to keep our budget sustainable. And we were shown different options, but we have 3 things to look at: either lowering some of our level of services for programs that are already existing, eliminating programs, or looking for other funding allocation. So this was a very interesting presentation. This was only the beginning of many. If any of you have interest in this, I encourage you to go and listen to this afternoon's presentation from the committee. It was a nice eye-opener for all of us on the steps that we need to take in the future. And again, this was only the beginning of a conversation, because we are going to be looking at a budget this year and our programs, and we have a lot of things in front of us. So we're going to have to take a really hard look at what we're funding in the city and what changes we might have to make. Does anyone want to add anything on that particular? Councilmember Lillquist.
Yes, Pinky, thank you. That was a nice summary, and one of the reasons why I did dissent on that population forecast number is those population and growth projections are directly multiplied times our level of service to give us estimated costs. So to me, level of service is very much an affordability issue, and I see population and growth projections is in the same mix in the same formula. That's a lot of my hesitancy with being too optimistic with growth forecasts. If we do indeed come up with good solutions on this discussion, then those population concerns will be lessened. We'll know how to handle growth in the future, hopefully.
Thank you, Councilmember Lillquist. That was a very important part of the discussion. Thank you. Is there anyone else? No? So that was for information only. Next, we had a presentation by the Small Business Development Center. And if any of you are not aware, this is a wonderful asset to our community. It is funded by Western Washington University, by Whatcom County, by the Port of Bellingham, and by the city. This is for anybody who wants to get a business started, wants to have their business looked at and reviewed, maybe they can run better, or maybe even you're interested in selling your business. So just want to remind everyone that we have this wonderful asset out there in the Small Business Development Center, and that they are there to help you through any issues you have in regards to starting a business or running your business. So we had a great presentation from them today, and just want to remind everyone to use their resources. They're out there for us, and we all want to care about our economic development, so they're there for us. The next thing in front of us was an emergency ordinance to create an electronic home detention program, provide for the establishment of the eligibility standards, and authorize a subsidy for costs to participate in the program. And I'm going to turn it over to you now, Peter. Is that correct? You have to read the ordinance?
Yes, Peter Raffato, City Attorney's Office. So when we have changes to an ordinance that don't make it into the packet, and because there will be a third and final, because it's an emergency ordinance, if it passes, it will be effective immediately. Our charter requires us to read the changes into the record, and I would like to do that. And these are the changes that were approved in committee. So, and I'm referring to the ordinance on page 15 of the packet, but I'll be going from the revised version. Under section 1, after the colon, a sentence is added: an emergency exists involving the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, and safety. Under Section 2A, I'll just read the new language. There are strike-throughs, but the new sentence will say, "An electronic home detention program is hereby established to provide a form of misdemeanor supervision services through and under the direction of the city's Department of Municipal Court." There's A is separated into two paragraphs. We now have a B. The first sentence of that section will be, "The program shall be operated in a manner consistent with public safety and in accordance with the minimum standards set by and provisions of federal, state, and local laws, and with such other standards, procedures, rules, and regulations as may be promulgated from time to time by the city." And then the lettering was re-lettered due to the additional paragraph. And the only thing I would add is that because it's an emergency ordinance, it would require 5 affirmative votes of council. It would be effective immediately. And there was one thing I wanted to add. Councilmember Barker asked a question earlier about a new program. And although this program, we're not asking for additional resources, one of the things that I mentioned before, as we engage in these new activities, transports to Yakima County, this program, it has somewhat of a cumulative effect. And folks that had full-time work both in BPD, the prosecutor's office, and municipal court are finding these, it's sort of a cumulative effect, so we don't know what that's going to mean down the road, but I wanted to mention that again since that was sort of asked for earlier.
Thank you. So in this afternoon, I'm sorry, Councilmember
I
Parker.
just, because I wasn't sure if I was clear with my question. I think just there will be, we were just having that level of service discussion, right? And I was thinking, of course, we can add programs that can actually decrease our costs if they're more efficient. So I was just interested. This one, I think we're going to see that it probably will save us money in the long run. So I was just really interested in what are the cost savings of that? Are we going to monitor that so as we then go ask for another program, we can actually show that we have revenue that we did not spend? So that was kind of more my question. Thank you.
This afternoon, the motion carried 7-0. Councilmember Lillquist.
I move that we pass the emergency ordinance as amended.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Councilmember Lillquist.
Peter, do we need to have a hearing within 60 days? We don't? How come we did with marijuana then?
So those emergency ordinances are specifically under state statutes having to do with zoning and development
okay.
regulations and emergencies moratorium.
Okay.
Okay. Any other question or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Last item on our committee meetings this afternoon was an update on the status of the surplus of the 315 West Holly Street, which again, we were going to have a hearing for this evening, but we feel as though the project is not quite ready to move forward. So our update this afternoon was just kind of the status of the project and that we are waiting till we're a little farther down on the process and all the parties are aligned to proceed on that. And now I actually have a question, Peter. We moved an item from the consent agenda, so do we move it to the end of committee? To how, Jean?
It's at your preference.
We can
Okay.
do it when you get the consent agenda.
We can do it and just call it out separately?
Yeah, somebody could just move items 2 through 4, then we can talk about
Okay,
item 1.
all right, terrific, thank you. All right, well then we will move on to our minutes. And, actually, we don't have any minutes to approve for this.
Yeah, we do.
Did I not get minutes? Pause.
Talk amongst yourselves.
There you go.
Now I have a few. Isn't this interesting viewing at home? Yeah. Has everyone else had a chance to read them? Okay, so it's just me.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes carry 7-0. Now, we will move on to old or new business.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Thank you, Pinky. I didn't bring that up this afternoon. I just wanted to, I think the council members know this. There are 2 items in tomorrow's county council session, and April and I talked about this. I was hoping to actually attend them. They have to do with the jail, and there'll be up first, close after 1 o'clock, a presentation of the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force Phase 1 report. Mr. Hamill sits on that task force. I'm going to try to attend. I've seen an earlier draft, but I think it's a really important discussion they're having over there. And then related to that, later on, close after 2:30, they'll be taking up a resolution adopting a statement of incarceration prevention, criminal justice, and jail planning principles. And in that resolution, they're adopting a statement of principles, and they've asked the tribes and cities of Whatcom County, including us, to consider it, and we'll be taking it up at our next meeting. So I was going to try to attend that too. I just want to bring that up, not just for our attention, but for the public's attention, that there is an ongoing discussion with regard to it's much larger than the jail, and that's part of it.
Councilmember Barker.
So if you haven't been down to our central library, I suggest you...
Microphone.
I'm sorry.
Microphone.
Oh, thanks.
No, go ahead.
Are we good?
Yeah, I want to follow up to Michael's if I can.
Okay. Oh, go for it.
Well, I just wanted to add that in addition to those items, at 11 a.m., the sheriff will give an update on the jail use agreement as well. So there's several items tomorrow that are jail related, so I didn't want people to miss that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
The, and on that note, I did call because I can attend those. You can get an audio recording, and if there are any PowerPoints, you can call the office and get a copy of those as well. Our central library's made some changes, so if you haven't been, go up to the upper floor. You'll see that it's opened up quite a bit. Am I good? It's opened up quite a bit. Some resources have been moved around, and they're trying to simplify a one-stop checkout, account services, and just making it a little bit more friendly, trying to help people use the technology more. So go on down, and just to let you know, your library staff worked extremely hard to make that happen, had to be very flexible, so it looks great.
It does look great. I've been in there. It looks terrific. Anyone else? Councilman Murphy.
Well, we've been hearing from specific neighbors and understanding in neighborhoods that they are experiencing problems with neighborhood crime. So I just wanted to give a couple of quick ideas that I hope people might consider in neighborhoods to keep them safer, because this is something I've personally been involved in terms of cleaning up a street and ridding it of crime. First and foremost, please keep your porch lights on. Lighting up the street will make it such a safer street, because it's no fun to try to commit a crime when all the lights are on and all the lights are on the person trying to commit the crime. Also, I encourage everybody to exchange phone numbers with your neighbors. One of the things that we did in my old neighborhood is we all had each other's phone numbers on a speed text. So if there was somebody who looked like they were suspicious, we'd obviously call 911. At the same time, we would all come out on our porch and say hi to the person. There is nothing more annoying than that when you know that the community really has eyes on their street. So it's just a couple of quick ideas that I hope neighbors might consider so we can all have safer streets. But I also hope we'll be bringing better services to the neighborhoods to assist even more.
Thank you. And then one thing from this afternoon, I mentioned that our annual City Council retreat will take place on Saturday, April 16th, from 10 to 3 p.m. at Woodstock Farms. This is open to the public. Councilmember Hamel.
Just had one item for old new business. I wanted to thank the volunteers. There's about 15 volunteers that clean the trail and along the pedestrian bridge over towards the York Construction Supply business, and they hauled away 660 pounds of trash. And so I just want to thank those volunteers for putting in a few hours of work on Sunday.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything for old and new business? Okay. I'm going to move on to our executive session report out. We did have an executive session today for claim number 201606. Staff provided information on a potential litigation matter. We do have an action at this time. I would entertain a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a settlement agreement with the following terms. Resolution of claim number 2016-06 for the payment of $680.24 to the claimant for water-related damages.
Move approval of the claim.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Now, we're going to move over to the mayor's report, and Brian, it's all you.
Good evening, Brian Heinrich, Mayor's Office. First, I wanted to say I had a chance to speak to Mayor Kelly this evening, and she's very appreciative of all the kind words and thoughts that people have expressed to her during her father's passing. So thank you very much. It means a tremendous amount to her and her family. There's a handful of appointments tonight. The mayor is going to reappoint Alfred Arkley and appoint Andrew Davis to Lake Whatcom Watershed Advisory Board, and we seek your approval.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Appointment carries 7-0.
Mayor would like to appoint Roger Collier to the Greenway Advisory Committee, and also looking for your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And for information, the mayor is appointing Elizabeth Jennings to the Community Development Advisory Board. And finally, for your information, the mayor is appointing Anders Papritz and Caitlin Upshaw to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And then I think I would just add that there were the House Operating and House Transportation in the state legislature. They released their budgets today. The Senate will release their versions, I believe, by Wednesday. There's only less than 3 weeks left in the session, so some things are moving forward. I sent out an update to council late last week, but that will change again in the next coming days. So I think I'll do my level best to keep you informed in the next couple weeks, and then we'll look at the 7th for a more complete update on just where we're at. The session ends on March 10th, so not much time left, but things are progressing.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Councilmember Barker.
I just noticed that there's a Caitlin also for the Parks and Recreation Board. It's on the back of Anders.
I'm sorry, did I not mention that?
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah.
I missed it. And I just have one more question. Sometimes these come and it says "see attached" instead of the person writing down, and it's not attached. So just in the future, if we could see what the attached is.
Can you,
Like example is on Greenways Advisory Committee, Roger Collier. All of his answers, it says, almost all of them says "see attached."
oh, I see what you're saying on the, yeah, I'll talk to, yeah, we can make that. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move to the consent agenda, and again, what?
I'll move item
Okay.
2 through 4, and we'll discuss 1.
Any discussion? All those in favor, we are voting for agenda items 2 to 4. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Aye.
carries for consent agendas, items 2 to 4, 7-0. Now we're going to turn it back over. We're going to review the item number 1, which, if you don't mind,
Yes,
Jean,
I'll
could
be
you
I'll
please?
be brief. As you know, last year during budget discussions, I tried to take this out of the budget. After looking at this today and seeing that we already are in February, we pretty much did agree to go until December 16th. So I'll just make a very simple motion. I move that we approve this expenditure with the understanding that after December 16th, we will no longer fund this project.
Second.
And the reason I say that is because I found out some things about how it's being funded this year. Whatcom County's not paying a dime, yet they got the Whatcom County Council of Governments to put in more money. And now you're looking at a $250,000 expenditure. We have a thriving biking community. We have a thriving bus community. I have heard from a lot of businesses who find the time that they have to spend on all this paperwork costly. I think people fully understand commuter trip reduction because we're doing it. And I think we could come up with, to spend the $25,000 on something else, and certainly the Council of Governments could come up with something to spend $100,000 more on this program. So I just think it's run its course. We have a community that's well up on this issue, and I've tried it for the last 2 years, so I just think that after this year, that should be the end of the city's involvement with this program. So.
Councilmember Murphy.
I'll just say after my involvement with the Council of Governments, the only disappointment with that is that if this funding goes away, I worry about the whole program going away. and that's job losses within the Council of Governments, and that's also perks that are taken away from community members that do participate in this, as well as community education that goes out to schools and all sorts of organizations about bus riding and alternative modes of transportation. So I just ask folks to consider that.
Councilmember Lillquist.
I'm sympathetic to part of what Jean is saying. I think there's a definite possibility that the same amount of money could be used slightly differently, but I believe the overall purpose is good. The difficulty for us is all we can do is fund a program run by another agency. So working through another agency, asking them to change their program is difficult. So I don't disagree with some of Jean's criticisms, but I'm going to continue supporting the program and work for improvements and making more focused expenditures on things which do continue to need support, and drop it in areas where maybe, as Jean says, we've kind of already passed that point.
Well, I think with especially today's level of service report, that it's going to make us have a very fine tooth look at what we're spending at and what's actually working and where our funding is needed. So I'm definitely supporting Jean on this one. Councilmember Borneman.
Yeah, I'm willing to consider ending it when it comes towards the end and bringing it back up to look at it at the end of the year for next year. I'm not willing to support saying I want it ended the following year, since we're supporting this right now. I want to see what's going on at the end of the year with the program and other things before I make my mind up for, a year ahead of time. So I'm not going to support it right now. I'll look at it if it comes back up at the end of the year when we're asked for funding at that time for it.
Councilmember Barker.
So I support Jean in this one. I attended the meeting the last time this came up, and I remember my predecessor had some really specific questions as to, who is this helping bring us back with more metrics, and I really wasn't able to find those, and you helped with some responses from my emails, but demographics, you look at this, and from July 1st, 2006, correct me if I'm reading this wrong, till December 31st, 2015, it's 18,000 members. Am I wrong to think that it reached more than 18,318 people?
Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. No, that's accurate in terms of total participants. I think we did follow up with the COG after last year's discussion, because there was a good discussion about this program, the scope of the services provided, and some of the specific accomplishments that are included in the COG report, the Smart Trips report, tried to touch on some of the questions that were raised before. As the COG presents it, it really is the education side of our mode shift program. So the city spends a lot of time on infrastructure, funding services through transit, and this really focuses on the education component. And I think one of the things that we've talked a lot about is the Smart Trips diary component of it, which I think those are good concerns and questions about that. It does become cumbersome for some users, and a lot of people, as the materials say, start the program and then find that it takes too much time to keep their diary up to date, and they don't continue. Over the years, I think the COG staff have really started to focus more on the education in the schools. So you see some of the information about elementary school education. They have a middle school program for 7th graders that's focused really on teaching them how to use transit, how to find their way around the city using different transportation modes, and then working with WTA. But certainly the council over the years has, and city staff have questioned some of the expenditures, and the program, as we've talked about, has really become much smaller over the years. It was around $600,000 a few years ago, total program budget, and now it's $250,000. But at the same time, the city has been the primary sponsor, primary funder of the program, both through our direct $25,000 appropriation, and then, as you pointed out, the COG funds it at $100,000, and the city's the primary funder of the COG through our allocation. So it's absolutely a worthy discussion. If the council does decide to consider it this year, I might add that, or might suggest that we have Susan Horst from the COG come forward or work with city staff to present what they're doing and perhaps answer in more detail some of the questions and concerns, and then it becomes a budgetary decision. Or if the council decides to go another way tonight, then I'll certainly work with the COG in that regard as well. Just for clarification, I think it is important to know that there really are two separate programs. There's the Smart Trips program, and then there's the Commute Trip Reduction program, which is funded a little bit differently. It's required by state law, and it's funded directly by the DOT, and they only work with the larger employers. So employers that have over 100 employees, I believe. So there's a handful of those larger employers that are required to go through the process. And that would continue regardless of whether or not we funded Smart Trips or not.
Councilmember Hamel.
Just wanted to ask a clarifying question. Is this allocation request, the $25,000, does that go to fund the education programs in the schools that you were discussing?
It does, yeah. So in your packet on page, I believe it starts on page, bear with me here, 35 or 36. Page 36 of your packet, at least my version of the packet, hopefully it's the same as yours. It goes through some of the tasks associated with this particular interlocal agreement, which is funded in part by the $25,000. And the education component is part of that. In addition, there's employer assistance, so employers that do want to participate, the COG works directly with them on how to work with their employees to ride the bus or take alternative means of transportation. And then task 6 is what they title School Smart Trips. And I'll just read out a few of the accomplishments just so everybody's aware. They focus again on the 7th grade classes. And they taught Shuckson, Colshan, and Whatcom last year. Doesn't look like they made their way to Fairhaven. And it looks like, 250 students participated in that middle school program. And then there's a similar elementary school program and some bicycle skills training. So they do other things besides the Smart Trips Diary, which has I think it was the beginning of the program, and it's evolved because some of the things that Gene pointed out are absolutely true. Those employers that have been participating for all the years and the commuters that are participating, they really are no longer wanting, I don't think, the majority of them to do all the paperwork and apply for the incentives. They're simply just, that's part of how they travel now. So it's really been effective and probably should be revisited as whether or not that's a real core component of the program.
I was just going to offer, Pinky, that I think your suggestion is appropriate to look at this program maybe in the context of the entire budget as we continue that future budget work throughout this year. And maybe to Terry's point as well, is that maybe the opportunity will present itself during our budget deliberations. I think what Gene offered in terms of a date certain through this year also satisfies the administration's concern about withholding our support at this time based on the budget discussions from last year and also discussions that occurred at the COG. So just wanted to offer that.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other comments? Councilmember Hamel.
We have the motion read back, restated.
Yes, I move that we fund it for the rest of the year until after December, then we don't fund it next year. That's what the motion is.
So there would be no discussion towards the end of the year?
I've discussed it enough for myself, so it's up to everybody else. I think we've come to the end of the road. That's how I felt. I've tried it for 3 years in a row, so that doesn't mean that people can't go their own way.
Okay, is everyone clear on the motion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, so motion does not pass. It is 4 to 3?
3 and 4.
3 and 4.
So I would move approval that we.
Excuse me, I need to clarify who voted for and who voted against.
Pinky.
Opposed?
Thank you.
So I would move approval of authorizing the contract for this year.
Second. Any discussion? I have something. So I just want to say that, yes, I will fund for the end of this year, but I want to ensure that this is one of the topics that gets put on our level of service discussion and our budget discussion. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nope.
Stay.
Motion carries 5-2. Okay, so, well, that was pretty quick. Wow. Want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Our next City Council meeting will be on March 7th, 2016. Until next time, for now, we are adjourned. Good night.